The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, a strange hum vibrating through the atmosphere as I stood at the edge of the alien city. Towering crystalline spires pierced the sky, refracting light into cascading rainbows that danced across my armor. The ground beneath me shimmered like liquid silver, responding to each step with ripples that spread outward in perfect geometric patterns. This wasn't just another mission. This was personal. My heart pounded against my ribcage, not from fear but from anticipation, as memories flooded back, memories of her. 3 cycles had passed since our paths first crossed on that desolate moon outpost. She had been different then, disguised among human traders, her true nature hidden behind holographic veils and carefully crafted deception. Yet something about her presence had drawn me in. Perhaps it was the way her eyes seemed to pierce through my very soul, or how her voice carried an ancient melody that resonated deep within my being. We had fought side by side against rogue factions, forged alliances where none should have existed, and shared moments of vulnerability that transcended species boundaries. But everything changed when she revealed herself as the queen of the Zytherian hive. That revelation had torn us apart, scattering our trust like stardust in a supernova. Her people needed her. Duty called louder than love ever could. And so she left, taking with her a piece of my humanity that I hadn't realized was missing until now. The Warrior Council had warned me against pursuing this path, their voices echoing concerns about interspecies diplomacy and cultural contamination. But what they didn't understand was that some connections transcend even the vastness of space itself. As I approached the grand amphitheater where the ceremony would take place, I couldn't help but notice how the local flora responded to my presence. Bioluminescent tendrils retracted from my path, while floating orbs of light seemed to guide me forward. The Zytherians had always been masters of organic technology, blending their biological essence with technological advancement in ways that still baffled human scientists. Every step brought me closer to confronting the woman who had become both my greatest ally and most profound mystery. The weight of my decision pressed heavily upon my shoulders. Human warriors weren't meant to walk alone into alien ceremonies, especially not those of royal significance. Yet here I was, clad in ceremonial armor that bore marks of both human and Zytherian craftsmanship, carrying with me nothing but determination and a small velvet pouch containing something far more precious than any weapon. The air grew denser with each passing moment, charged with an electric tension that made my skin prickle with awareness. I remembered the exact moment when everything shifted between us. It was during the final battle against the Krylon raiders, when we found ourselves cornered in the engineering bay. Her quick thinking had saved us both, using her bioluminescent abilities to create a diversion while I disabled their weapon systems. In that moment of chaos, our hands had touched, and something unspoken passed between us. A connection that defied logic and reason, binding us together in ways neither of us fully understood at the time. Later, when the dust settled and the immediate danger passed, we had shared a quiet moment in the observation deck, watching twin suns set over the fractured landscape. She had looked at me then with those piercing violet eyes, and for the first time, I saw beyond the warrior queen facade to the vulnerable being beneath. Our relationship developed in stolen moments between missions, brief encounters that left lasting impressions. She taught me about Zytherian customs, showing me how to read the subtle shifts in their bioluminescence that conveyed complex emotions. In return, I shared stories of Earth's ancient civilizations, drawing parallels between our cultures that surprised us both. There were nights when we would sit together in silence, simply existing in each other's presence, communicating through touch and shared understanding rather than words. These moments became sacred to me, little islands of peace in an otherwise turbulent existence. Yet with each passing day, the shadow of her royal heritage loomed larger. I watched as she struggled to balance her growing feelings for me with her responsibilities to her people. The weight of her crown became increasingly apparent in the way she sometimes withdrew after particularly intimate moments, her expression clouded with conflict. I tried to reassure her that love and duty didn't have to be mutually exclusive, but deep down, I knew the truth. The Zytherian hive mind operated on principles that humans could barely comprehend, and our bond represented a potential threat to their delicate social structure. The breaking point came unexpectedly, during what should have been a routine diplomatic meeting. As representatives from various species gathered to discuss trade agreements, I noticed her demeanor change subtly. Her normally fluid movements became rigid, and her bioluminescent patterns shifted to display formal protocols. When the High Council members arrived, revealing themselves as her direct advisors, The reality of our situation crashed down upon us. She had to choose between maintaining her position as queen and continuing our relationship. The pain in her eyes as she explained this to me later that night cut deeper than any blade ever could. Our parting was neither dramatic nor angry, but rather filled with a profound sadness that neither of us could articulate. She gave me a small crystal pendant, explaining that it contained a fragment of her essence, a piece of her that would always remain with me. In return, I promised to honor our connection by becoming a bridge between our species, vowing to work toward mutual understanding rather than conflict. As she disappeared into the transport vessel, surrounded by her royal guard, I realized that losing her wasn't just about saying goodbye to the woman I loved. It was about letting go of the future we had dreamed about together, a future where our differences could have created something beautiful instead of dividing us. Standing at the entrance of the grand amphitheater, I felt every eye turn toward me as the massive crystalline doors parted with a sound like shattering ice. The assembled crowd of Zytherian dignitaries and visiting alien delegates fell silent, their bioluminescent patterns shifting in waves of surprise and concern. She stood at the center of the chamber, resplendent in her ceremonial regalia, her form radiating with an ethereal glow that made my breath catch in my throat. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as our gazes locked across the vast space, her violet eyes widening with shock before quickly masking the emotion behind layers of royal composure. The collective gasp from the assembly rippled through the chamber like a sonic wave, causing the floating light orbs to flicker erratically. Protocol officers scrambled to maintain order, their frantic movements creating chaotic patterns in the air as they attempted to intercept me. But I continued forward, each step deliberate and measured, my boots clicking against the responsive floor with authority. The Queen's royal guard moved to block my path, their chitinous armor gleaming menacingly in the ambient light, yet she raised a single hand, halting their advance with a gesture that spoke volumes about her conflicted state. Whispers erupted throughout the chamber, a cacophony of alien languages and mental frequencies that created an almost physical pressure in the air. Some delegates recoiled visibly, their forms shrinking away from this unprecedented breach of protocol, while others leaned forward with intense curiosity. The diplomatic observers from the Galactic Union exchanged concerned glances, their official recorders already documenting every second of this unfolding drama. Through it all, she remained rooted in place, her regal posture unwavering even as her bioluminescent patterns betrayed a turmoil of emotions that no amount of royal training could completely conceal. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees as I finally reached the central dais, standing mere meters from the woman who had haunted my thoughts for 3 long cycles. The air between us crackled with unspoken words and unresolved tensions, heavy with the weight of choices made and paths not taken. Around us, the assembled dignitaries maintained a tense silence, their collective attention focused entirely on this unprecedented confrontation between human warrior and alien queen. Every movement, every breath, every subtle shift in lighting seemed amplified in this moment of suspended reality, where the fate of interstellar relations hung precariously in the balance. Her voice, when it finally emerged, carried the weight of centuries-old tradition and royal authority, yet trembled with an undertone of raw emotion that only I could detect. "You dare interrupt the ascension ceremony?" she demanded, her words resonating through the chamber with crystalline clarity. The surrounding dignitaries gasped audibly, their bioluminescent displays flashing in synchronized patterns of outrage and disbelief. I met her gaze steadily, noting how her violet eyes betrayed a conflict between her public role and private feelings. The ceremonial staff in her hands vibrated slightly, its embedded crystals casting fragmented rainbows across her regal features. "This ceremony," I responded, my voice carrying through the sudden silence, "is built upon a foundation of lies." The words hung in the air like charged particles, causing visible ripples in the responsive floor beneath us. Several Zytherian elders surged forward, their bioluminescent patterns shifting to aggressive hues, but she raised her hand again, this time with less certainty. "Explain yourself," she commanded, though her voice wavered imperceptibly at the edges. The velvet pouch in my hand felt heavier than it should, its contents burning against my palm like a brand. "The treaty you're about to sign," I continued, stepping closer despite the palpable tension, "contains clauses that will effectively enslave your outer colonies." Gasps erupted from the diplomatic observers, their recording devices whirring furiously as they captured this unprecedented breach of protocol. Her royal guard shifted uneasily, their chitinous armor clicking softly in the charged atmosphere. "These terms were inserted through back-channel negotiations," I pressed on, Negotiations conducted without your full knowledge. The admission caused visible shockwaves through the assembly, with several delegates exchanging alarmed glances. She turned to her chief advisor, a towering Zytherian elder whose bioluminescent patterns had darkened to a threatening crimson. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice carrying the sharp edge of betrayal. The elder hesitated, his usually fluid movements becoming jerky and uncertain. "Your Majesty, these measures were deemed necessary for—" he began, but she cut him off with a gesture that silenced the entire chamber. The air seemed to vibrate with the intensity of her focus as she turned back to me, her royal composure cracking like fractured crystal. "You bring evidence?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper yet carrying through the absolute silence. From the velvet pouch, I produced a data crystal, its surface etched with both human and Zytherian encryption protocols. The sight of it caused several members of her council to physically recoil, their bioluminescent displays flickering erratically. "This contains communications, financial records, and strategic plans," I explained, each word landing like a hammer blow. "Evidence that proves beyond doubt the manipulation of your court." The chamber erupted into chaos as various factions began shouting accusations and defenses simultaneously. Through it all, she remained still, her violet eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that burned through years of separation and misunderstanding. The ceremonial staff in her hands now pulsed with erratic light patterns, mirroring the storm of emotions raging within her. "Guards!" she commanded suddenly, her voice cutting through the din like a blade. "Seal the chamber. No one leaves until we've uncovered the full extent of this betrayal." Her decision sent shockwaves through the assembly, with several high-ranking officials attempting to protest before being silenced by her uncompromising glare. In that moment, as the massive crystalline doors sealed shut with a sound like thunder, I saw something remarkable happen. The rigid lines of protocol and hierarchy that had defined this ceremony began to dissolve, replaced by a raw honesty that stripped away centuries of diplomatic pretense. Delegates from various species exchanged knowing glances, their own suspicions confirmed by the evidence I had presented. The Queen's transformation from ceremonial figurehead to decisive leader unfolded before our eyes, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to command colors that demanded absolute attention and respect. "Bring forth the documentation," she ordered, her voice now carrying the weight of genuine authority rather than mere tradition. As I handed over the data crystal, our fingers brushed briefly, sending a jolt of recognition through both of us. The simple contact spoke volumes about the trust we had once shared and might rebuild, if given the chance. Around us, the chamber's atmosphere had shifted dramatically, from a sterile ritual space to a crucible of truth and accountability. The floating light orbs now pulsed in sync with the heightened emotional state of the assembly, casting dynamic shadows across the crystalline walls. Several of her closest advisors stepped forward reluctantly, their bioluminescent displays betraying guilt and fear. The Queen moved among them with purposeful grace, her questions cutting through their attempts at evasion like precision strikes. Each revelation added another layer of complexity to the conspiracy, implicating not just her immediate council but reaching into the highest echelons of Zytherian governance. The diplomatic observers from the Galactic Union recorded everything with clinical detachment, their official status preventing them from intervening directly but ensuring that this unprecedented exposure would have far-reaching consequences. What struck me most profoundly was how the Queen's leadership style evolved in real time. Gone was the carefully cultivated distance of royal protocol. In its place emerged a commander who understood the value of brutal honesty and decisive action. She divided the assembly into working groups, assigning tasks based on expertise rather than rank, and established communication channels that bypassed traditional hierarchies. The transformation was so complete that even her royal guard seemed momentarily unsure of their roles, their usual rigid formations giving way to more fluid arrangements that better served the evolving situation. As evidence mounted and connections were drawn between seemingly unrelated events, a pattern emerged that went beyond simple political maneuvering. The conspiracy appeared to be part of a larger network of influence that spanned multiple star systems, with tentacles reaching into both human and alien territories. Each new revelation caused ripples through the assembly, forcing delegates to confront uncomfortable truths about their own government's involvement. The Queen handled these revelations with a combination of diplomatic finesse and ruthless efficiency that left no room for denial or delay. Through it all, our shared history became both a strength and a challenge. The way she occasionally sought my input, trusting my judgment in matters where others might have questioned my presence, spoke volumes about the foundation we had built during our time together. Yet each interaction also highlighted the gulf that had formed between us, the weight of responsibility and expectation pressing down on her slender shoulders. The chamber itself seemed to respond to this emotional current, its crystalline structures pulsing with patterns that reflected the ongoing drama of truth and reconciliation playing out within its walls. The investigation took an unexpected turn when one of the junior diplomats, a young Zytherian whose bioluminescent patterns still flickered with nervous uncertainty, produced a secondary data crystal. The Queen's reaction to this new evidence was immediate and visceral. Her entire form stiffened, and her usually controlled bioluminescence erupted in chaotic patterns that caused the chamber's lighting to fluctuate wildly. I recognized the signs of deep personal distress, having witnessed similar reactions during our time together on the Moon Outpost. The data crystal contained communications that implicated not just her council, but members of her own family line in the conspiracy. As the information unfolded, a chilling pattern emerged. The manipulation of colony policies was merely a symptom of a much deeper rot within the Zytherian hierarchy. Generations of carefully orchestrated breeding programs, designed to maintain pure genetic lines, had created a power structure riddled with incestuous relationships and hidden agendas. The Queen's own position had been secured through these machinations, making her both beneficiary and prisoner of a system she had never fully understood. Her violet eyes, when they met mine, held a mixture of shame and resolve that cut deeper than any blade. The implications extended beyond politics into the very fabric of Zytherian society. Their hive mind, traditionally celebrated as a model of collective consciousness, revealed itself to be more fractured than anyone had suspected. The data showed instances where individual desires had been suppressed, dissenting voices systematically eliminated, and alternative viewpoints erased from historical records. Most disturbing was the discovery of secret facilities where those who couldn't conform to the rigid genetic standards were quietly removed from society, their existences erased as if they had never been. Around us, the chamber's atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with the weight of these revelations. Several elder council members collapsed under the strain, their bioluminescent displays flickering out completely as the truth overwhelmed their carefully constructed realities. Younger delegates, many of whom had grown up believing in the purity of their society's foundations, reacted with visible shock and confusion. The diplomatic observers from other species maintained their professional detachment, but their recording devices worked overtime, capturing every nuance of this unprecedented unraveling of Zytherian society's core principles. The Queen moved among her people with a newfound purpose, her royal bearing transformed into something more authentic and powerful. She addressed each revelation with a combination of compassion and steel that forced everyone present to confront uncomfortable truths. When evidence surfaced of her own parents' involvement in the genetic purges, she paused only briefly before acknowledging the pain and moving forward with the investigation. Her ability to separate personal trauma from necessary action inspired others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of honesty and accountability throughout the chamber. What struck me most profoundly was how these revelations affected the younger generation of Zytherians. Many of them had secretly harbored doubts about their society's perfection, but lacked the courage or evidence to challenge the status quo. Now, emboldened by the Queen's example, they began speaking out about their own experiences with discrimination and suppression. The chamber transformed into a forum for truth-telling, with individuals sharing stories that had been buried for generations. The Queen listened to each account with unwavering attention, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to reflect empathy and understanding, creating a safe space for healing to begin. Through it all, our connection became both a source of strength and a reminder of the personal cost of these revelations. Each time she sought my counsel or support, I saw glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, now tempered by the harsh realities of her position. The investigation had stripped away layers of illusion, leaving behind something raw and authentic that demanded both our commitment and courage to navigate. The chamber itself seemed to respond to this transformation, its crystalline structures rearranging into new patterns that reflected the changing dynamics within. The investigation's momentum reached a critical point when a group of former colony administrators emerged from the shadows of secrecy, their presence triggering alarm systems throughout the chamber. Their arrival was accompanied by a surge of electromagnetic interference that caused the floating light orbs to dance erratically and disrupted the bioluminescent displays of everyone present. The Queen's immediate response was to extend protection to these whistleblowers, her decision sparking immediate controversy among the remaining council members. Some lunged forward in protest, their movements aggressive and desperate, while others retreated into defensive clusters, their bioluminescent patterns flashing warning signals. Chaos erupted as security protocols engaged automatically, sealing off sections of the chamber and activating containment fields around key witnesses. The whistleblowers, their forms partially obscured by protective cloaking devices, began transmitting encrypted data streams that overloaded the chamber's recording systems. The diplomatic observers scrambled to capture the unfolding drama, their official status providing them sanctuary from the escalating conflict. Through this turmoil, she moved with calculated precision, her commands cutting through the noise like laser pulses. "Priority Alpha, secure the witnesses," she declared, her voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. I found myself caught in the middle of a rapidly evolving battlefield, where allegiances shifted with each new revelation. Former allies turned against each other, their true loyalties exposed by the whistleblower's testimony. The air crackled with tension as hidden weapon systems activated throughout the chamber, their targeting sensors locking onto various delegates. The Queen's Royal Guard formed a protective perimeter around her, but she pushed through their ranks, determined to maintain control of the situation. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted to command colors, overriding automated security protocols and establishing direct control over the chamber's defensive systems. The whistleblower's testimony painted a picture of systematic oppression that went beyond anything we had previously uncovered. They revealed the existence of secret detention facilities where dissidents were subjected to experimental procedures designed to erase their memories and rewrite their identities. The data they transmitted included coordinates, personnel rosters, and operational logs that implicated high-ranking officials from multiple species in a web of corruption that spanned star systems. Each revelation triggered new waves of conflict, with accused parties attempting to flee or destroy evidence, while others moved to protect the whistleblowers at great personal risk. The chamber's crystalline structure began to respond to the escalating tension, its walls pulsing with warning patterns that matched the chaos unfolding within. Support beams shifted positions, creating natural barriers between conflicting factions while maintaining clear lines of sight for security forces. The Queen utilized these changes to her advantage, directing her forces with military precision while simultaneously coordinating with external agencies to secure the safety of endangered witnesses. Her dual role as investigator and protector became increasingly apparent as she navigated the complex web of threats and opportunities emerging from the crisis. Amidst this maelstrom of revelations and counter-revelations, our shared history became both a tactical advantage and a potential liability. The intimate knowledge we had of each other's strengths and weaknesses allowed us to anticipate and complement each other's actions, but it also made us targets for those seeking to exploit personal vulnerabilities. The Queen's trust in my judgment, demonstrated through subtle gestures and shared glances, carried significant weight in a chamber where traditional authority structures were crumbling. Each decision we made together, each strategy we implemented, reinforced the unconventional alliance we had formed while simultaneously challenging established norms of interspecies cooperation. The situation reached a boiling point when classified files began materializing in the chamber's central projection field, their contents exposing covert operations that implicated major galactic powers in the conspiracy. The sheer volume of incriminating evidence triggered automatic response protocols from various diplomatic delegations, leading to a standoff between security forces representing different species. The Queen's ability to maintain control while processing this flood of information demonstrated a level of leadership that transcended traditional boundaries of species and culture. Her decisions, informed by both Zytherian tradition and human pragmatism, created new pathways for resolution while respecting the complex web of interstellar relations. As the crisis intensified, the chamber transformed into a microcosm of galactic politics, with every faction maneuvering for position while grappling with the implications of the unfolding revelations. The Queen's presence at the center of this storm became a focal point for change, her actions setting precedents that would reshape diplomatic protocols for generations to come. The investigation had evolved from a simple exposure of corruption into a catalyst for systemic transformation, challenging fundamental assumptions about power, loyalty, and justice across species boundaries. Through it all, the connection between us remained a constant, guiding force that influenced every decision and shaped the emerging new order. The chamber's atmosphere grew increasingly volatile as the investigation exposed deeper layers of conspiracy, each revelation triggering new waves of conflict and realignment. The Queen's leadership faced its greatest test when evidence emerged implicating her own genetic lineage in the creation of biological weapons designed to target specific genetic markers. This discovery caused a seismic shift in the chamber's dynamics, with various factions scrambling to either distance themselves from or capitalize on this explosive information. Her response was immediate and decisive. She ordered a complete lockdown of all genetic research facilities across Cytherian territories, simultaneously initiating emergency protocols that would allow for independent verification of all biological research projects. The situation escalated further when several senior researchers, fearing repercussions from their involvement in unethical experiments, attempted to activate self-destruct sequences in key laboratories. The Queen's quick thinking prevented disaster, as she utilized her direct neural link with the Chamber's security systems to override these attempts. Her actions demonstrated a mastery of both traditional Cytherian protocols and modern security measures that left many observers awestruck. Through our shared mental link, forged during our time together, I could sense the immense pressure she was under, yet her resolve never wavered. A breakthrough came when we discovered a hidden compartment in the chamber itself, containing centuries-old documentation that revealed the true origins of the Cytherian genetic purity laws. These documents, preserved through advanced crystalline storage technology, told a story of ancient conflicts and forced assimilations that had been deliberately erased from official records. The Queen's reaction to this revelation was profound. She immediately ordered the declassification of all historical records related to Cytherian expansion policies, recognizing that true reform could only come through complete transparency. The impact of these discoveries rippled through the chamber, causing several high-ranking officials to collapse under the weight of their ancestors' crimes. Younger delegates, freed from the burden of maintaining false narratives, began forming new alliances based on shared values rather than genetic heritage. The Queen capitalized on this shift, establishing working groups that included representatives from previously marginalized communities and creating channels for direct communication between colony worlds and the central government. Her vision for a more inclusive society began taking shape before our eyes, with practical reforms being implemented even as the investigation continued. Our connection became both a strength and a vulnerability during these crucial moments. The intimate understanding we had developed during our time together allowed us to anticipate each other's needs and support each other through the most challenging revelations. Yet this same connection made us targets for those seeking to destabilize the Queen's authority. Several assassination attempts were thwarted through our combined vigilance, each attempt reinforcing the importance of trust in leadership during times of crisis. The chamber itself seemed to recognize this dynamic, its crystalline structures rearranging to create spaces that facilitated collaboration while maintaining necessary security protocols. As the investigation entered its final stages, the Queen implemented sweeping reforms that fundamentally altered Cytherian society. She abolished the genetic purity laws, established independent oversight committees for all scientific research, and created a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address historical wrongs. These changes triggered immediate responses from other species, with several governments expressing interest in adopting similar reforms. The chamber became a hub of diplomatic activity, with representatives from various star systems seeking guidance on implementing more transparent governance structures. Through it all, the Queen maintained her focus, balancing immediate crisis management with long-term strategic planning, her leadership style evolving into something truly revolutionary in galactic politics. The Chamber's transformation reached its peak as the Queen announced her intention to dismantle the traditional hierarchical structure of Cytherian governance. This bold move sent shockwaves through the Assembly, with some delegates reacting with outright hostility while others expressed cautious optimism. She proposed a new system of governance that would incorporate elements from various successful models across species boundaries, creating a hybrid structure that valued merit and capability over genetic heritage. The announcement triggered immediate debates about implementation details, with experts from multiple disciplines contributing their insights to shape this unprecedented reform. Through our shared mental link, I could feel the immense weight of her decision, the gravity of dismantling centuries-old traditions that had defined Cytherian society. Yet her resolve remained unshaken, strengthened by the growing support from younger generations and marginalized communities. The chamber itself seemed to resonate with this historic moment, its crystalline structures rearranging into patterns that reflected the emerging new order. Bioluminescent displays throughout the space began showing real-time simulations of the proposed governance model, allowing delegates to visualize the potential impact of these changes on their society. The Queen's approach to this monumental task demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both Cytherian psychology and interstellar diplomacy. She established transition teams comprising members from diverse backgrounds, ensuring that the reform process would benefit from multiple perspectives. These teams worked tirelessly to develop protocols for integrating traditional Cytherian values with modern governance principles, creating a framework that respected cultural heritage while embracing necessary change. The chamber became a laboratory for political innovation, with various factions testing different approaches to power sharing and decision-making. Our connection played a crucial role in navigating these complex waters. The intimate knowledge we had of each other's thought processes allowed us to anticipate challenges and opportunities before they emerged. During particularly tense negotiations, our shared glances and subtle gestures communicated volumes, enabling us to coordinate responses that balanced Zytherian traditions with progressive reforms. This synergy became increasingly apparent to observers, with many noting how our partnership exemplified the potential for cross-species collaboration in addressing complex societal issues. The investigation's final revelations provided crucial momentum for these reforms. Evidence of successful hybrid governance models from other species, previously dismissed as irrelevant to Zytherian society, now gained new significance. The Queen skillfully incorporated these examples into her proposals, demonstrating how traditional values could coexist with modern democratic principles. Her ability to synthesize diverse influences into a coherent vision for the future inspired confidence among both her people and international observers. The chamber's atmosphere shifted from one of crisis management to constructive reform, with delegates actively participating in shaping the new governance structure. As the reform process gained momentum, the Queen implemented immediate measures to address systemic inequalities. She ordered the redistribution of resources to previously neglected colony worlds, established independent oversight bodies to monitor governmental activities, and created channels for direct citizen participation in policymaking. These actions triggered a wave of similar initiatives across the galaxy, with other species looking to the Zytherian transformation as a model for their own reforms. The chamber became a beacon of hope for progressive change, attracting visitors from distant star systems who sought to learn from this unprecedented experiment in governance evolution. As the final votes were cast, the chamber resonated with a harmony never heard before, its crystalline walls glowing in unity. The Queen stood tall, her bioluminescence steady and bright, signaling a new dawn for her people. Our eyes met one last time, filled with unspoken gratitude and understanding. She had chosen her path, and I had fulfilled mine. The reforms passed unanimously, sealing a future where species could coexist without fear or oppression. As I turned to leave, the crowd parted silently, their respect evident in every flicker of light. Her voice echoed softly behind me, "You have given us more than truth, you've given us hope." I paused but didn't look back, knowing this chapter was complete. Outside, the alien sky shimmered with possibility, mirroring the change within. And as I walked away, I carried not just memories, but the promise of a brighter galaxy.